I have something very satisfying to show you all.
This is good stuff.
Okay, so Michael Wolff, he's a journalist.
Gadfly. Gadfly is the better way to describe it.
Yeah, I say journalist with the quotes, air quotes. He's written 2 books now about the Trump administration. The first one, I know he relied like very heavily on Steve Bannon, who obviously has his own agenda. Some of the information that he put into the book may have in fact been misinformation. Yep. There's some doubts about, the credibility. So I'm not trying to like lionize Michael Wolff here. However, he went on CNN's Reliable Sources with Brian Stelter in order to sell his latest Trump book. And he really had some things to share with Brian about what he thought of his journalism and the network writ large. Let's take a listen to that.
I think the media has done a terrible job on this. I think you yourself, while you're a nice guy, you're full of sanctimony. You become part of one of the parts of the problem of the media. You come on here and you have a monopoly on truth. You know exactly how things are supposed to be done. You are one of the reasons people can't stand the media. Sorry.
You're cracking me up.
It's your fault.
So what should I do differently, Michael?
Don't talk so much. Listen more. People have genuine problems with the media. The media doesn't get the story right. The media exists in its own bubble.
That's true. I agree.
You got to stop. I mean, that last segment that I just had to listen to of all of the people saying the same old stuff. Also, you're incredibly repetitive. It's week after week. I mean, you're the flip side of Donald Trump. Fake news, and you say virtuous news. There's
we just figure out what is
here.
real.
I mean,
I'm listening.
Amazing. He goes on, Brian's like, so why are you here then?
Yeah.
And he's like, I gotta sell books.
I'm a book salesman.
I'm a book salesman. And then at the end, Brian's like, thanks for coming. It was great talking to you. Let's do it again. It's like,
what? Oh, man. Woo.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing
good stuff.
Is incredible. For him to tell Brian Stelter to his face, like, you're sanctimonious, number one.
True.
Number 2, you and your network are part of the problem. Number 3, you're repetitive. It's the same crap every single segment.
True.
Same people saying the same thing over and over again. You are the reason why people hate the media so much. Again, not trying to lionize Michael Wolff here because there's issues there as well, but pretty incredible to see Brian, and Stelter doesn't know what to do.
Yeah, he's never even heard it before. I think that's the crazy thing, is that he never seems to have addressed this
how to deal with that. Yeah, and I mean, it really was pretty wild to see, and it did make me think about, remember after Trump was first elected in 2016, and there was this conversation happening within the media of like, oh shit, man, did we give this guy too much airtime? Because they did from the very beginning, because he rated, so
really
even
well.
before he was really particularly serious as a candidate, they're giving him all this airtime because it was great for them, great for their bottom line, and it continued to be. I mean, there's this famous, moment where Hillary Clinton is giving some kind of a speech, and instead they choose to have Donald Trump's empty podium on the screen instead of the speech that she's giving, because that was good for their business and their bottom line. Jeff Zucker admitted as much, as did other television executives. And so, and this is one thing that Matt Taibbi said, he's, rather than like have any sort of corrective of, maybe there are other things that will, like, we don't have to do every single segment on Donald Trump. They went from 10,000 hours of Donald Trump to 10,000 hours of Donald Trump is bad.
Yep.
Right? And that was the corrective. And so now, and you tell me if you've noted this as well, the ratings for all of these networks are total, dumpster fire, train wreck, whatever you want to say about them. And so they seem to be now going back to, there was a little lull in like their Trump, it seems like now they're amping back up their Trump coverage and going back to that model, because whatever else they were doing wasn't working. So they're going back to the well to try to gin up like Trump outrage again, even though, the guy's not president anymore.
I completely agree. And I see it 100. So in the limited interactions I have with cable, which is like passing by it, for some reason it's on at a diner in an airport.
Unavoidable.
What I have noticed is that, they tried to return to 2013, 2014 coverage of Biden, of a few other things, but now they are all in back on Trump. Is he going to run again? What does his latest statement say? This whole thing about if I would have had a coup, then this is how I would have done it. Generals were terrified in December of, 6 months ago, even though nothing's happening right now. And then now, what are they doing also? I'm seeing the exact same thing. Fear-mongering over the Delta variant, which we will get to. But they're trying to recreate the COVID magic. COVID and Trump at the same time, plus Black Lives Matter, and the January 6th Capitol riot. They were the greatest thing that ever happened to these people. It was live, because think about it. You got to think about what these people are really good at. Live pictures, breaking news, bringing in varieties of experts, trying to have, that's the organ of mass media. That's kind of what it was built for.
Fake tribal outrage.
Fake tribal outrage is the byproduct, though, because they have to fill in all that airtime in between and also get people ginned up for every once in a while when they have a useful segment. So this is what's happened, is that now they're trying to recreate all of that with the Delta variant and talking about Trump absolutely 24/7. So I think it's like you said, there's no heroes in the Michael Wolff, Brian Stelter story, but Michael Wolff is right, which is that, Brian Stelter, we covered this. He got higher ratings on his show when he was on vacation. Like, that guy is literally, I've seen him referred to as the media's janitor, which is that anytime the Washington Post or whatever screws up, it's all like, well, here's why it's really Trump's fault, or here's why you still should trust the media. An accurate self-reflection of 2016, which actually did occur in some places.
Yeah.
And I really did appreciate it. There were very few and far between people being like, hey, I missed it. I screwed up. You know what? The entire country's been changing over the last 8 years. We focused too much on Obama and all of these false promises. We tried to build Hillary up into something that anybody with a brain could have seen, that she was one of the worst political candidates of all time. And we should just admit we completely screwed the pooch. There was a brief period. But then what happened? Hillary and many of these other people started blaming fake news on Facebook, and this is why it all, I think, comes full circle, which is that I think Biden and many of these establishment liberals, they believe in their bones that Trump was elected in 2016 because of fake news and misinformation on Facebook. They can't accept for a moment that millions of people lost their faith in the Democratic Party, or even the media, or even in all of our institutions of higher life, and they just want to say, screw you. They want to hold up a middle finger to you specifically, Brian Stelter, to you, President Joe Biden, to you, Jen Psaki.
Yeah.
But it's much more convenient to be like, oh, their brains are rotted by Facebook. Many of them are, but I wouldn't blame Facebook, though, necessarily. And I think that when you see full circle around what they want to blame and what they don't, then you see how they choose to use the levers of power.
Let's just think about CNN. Like, how can you go out there with a straight face and be like, we're, as Michael will put it, virtuous news, we're accurate and unbiased and just calling balls and strikes here. And then you see what Andrew Cuomo and Chris Cuomo are doing. Like, give me a break. Come on. We saw how they were happy to prop up one political candidate who was a useful foil to Trump and completely ignore any conflicts of interest with his brother, who's a primetime host, who was literally advising him, giving him campaign strategy, political advice at the time, and getting VIP treatment in terms of his own coronavirus testing. And the network's just little slap on the wrist and continue forward. Just as one little example of why maybe people don't have so much trust in the media, that's it right there. And the irony with Michael Wolff is this is the other part that's really funny, is part of what's given the media justification to really reinsert Trump into the middle of everything is that there are a couple of these new books, Trump books, that have come out. It's about the right timing, post-administration. People have had time to get their, their books out and on the shelves, et cetera, et cetera. Wolff's being one of them. And the funny thing is this guy's fairly discredited in terms of being an accurate source of information, but because he gives them these salacious little tidbits from in the administration, a lot of these outlets report it as if it's fact, even though they know what you and I know, that, a lot of this, some of it is true, I'm sure. Some of it is sort of true. Some of it is just completely fabricated and given to him by someone who has their own agenda to push. They know all of that, but they can't resist it. And so
need the ratings.
It's really ironic that he would be the one telling them the truth about who they are and what they're actually doing and how they are the problem in terms of the media, because he's playing into that dynamic very cleverly and feeding them exactly the type of juicy tidbits about Trump and about the Trump administration that they themselves want to consume. So it's like it's a full service economy here between the two of them.
100% completely right. And it's just funny, just speaking to their future, let's put this up there, which is that MSNBC's Casey Hunt, the former host of the early morning program at like 5 a.m., has now been hired by CNN to the tune of reportedly between $1 million and $1.5 million in order to beef up their push into streaming. To which I say, Casey, CNN, welcome to the game. You may discover here in the internet world of actual people, of especially younger people, not boomers who you can scare, that a lot of the people here don't want to hear anything you have to say. And in many of the ways that you guys know how to report the news and all that, yeah, good luck. That's all I have to say. I know we shouldn't be too mean, but it is funny. You pair it with MSNBC's Nicole Wallace, them being like, yeah, we're going to do extra streaming on Peacock. Look, people only subscribe to Peacock for one reason, because The Office is on it. That's it. If they didn't have that, they'd be totally screwed. And it's funny, like, nobody wants to watch B-rate, like, whatever doesn't make it to air on MSNBC, which is already extremely lowly rated during the day. They're going to put that on a streaming service. Why would you want to watch that? Same with Morning Joe. Oh, extra Morning Joe content. That's what the people cry out for on their streaming networks. It's a total joke. And it just shows that they are not even close to equipped for battle in the actual new media age.
Cable news is not like a competitive ecosystem. People have it on in the background. It's like the default on their
usually on mute
on their channel. It's on at the airport. It's on in the restaurant in the background. And so your numbers, and having worked in cable news, I can tell you this, like your numbers and your ratings are very much dependent on like whoever was watching before you showed up. So it's a very different dynamic because people are not, in most cases, there are a few exceptions. I would say Rachel Maddow, Tucker probably being the two primary ones. There are a few exceptions where people are appointment viewing. I'm showing up for this person at this time. Most of it is just by default. And if you take away that default audience, there is literally no audience. So the idea that, and again, this is not to be like mean to Casey Hunt in particular, who I knew at MSNBC and was always very nice and lovely to me. But the idea that there's anyone who's going to like affirmatively seek out Casey Hunt and what she has to say about politics,
not just
especially
her,
like
I mean, any of
these people, it's funny. I mean, it's just hilarious. It's like, and it also there's a larger conversation about the people, the executives who make this choice and think that these millions of dollars on Nicole Wallace or on Casey Hunt in a big streaming bet to appeal to young Americans, thinking that this is a good use of resources, like it also really, really undercuts the whole idea of the meritocracy, that these are our best and brightest who are these executives running these companies, because it's a hilarious idea. And on YouTube and in streaming and where you have to have an audience that actually shows up for you, very few of these people would ultimately succeed. Their success is dependent on like the default sensibility of the network, the people who have this on in the background all day, every day, and you could swap out this anchor, this pundit, that pundit, and it really ultimately doesn't matter all that much or make that much of a difference with a very, very few limited exceptions. It also does remind me, and this does circle back to like the Brian Stelter, Michael Wolff thing, is Trump really saved these networks.
Oh, God.
They were dying. Cord cutting, like their content was boring, it was repetitive. People were tuning out, especially young people who have continued to tune out, by the way. But because they got this giant bump from basically boomers, resistance boomers on one side and like Trump boomers on the other side, it gave them this new life. It gave them this renaissance. And I think they started to believe their own hype, that this was actually something they created, something that they did right. And that's how you can end up with these very, we'll just say, perplexing programming choices.
Good luck. That's all we have to say. Good luck.
Hey guys, thanks so much for watching.
That's right. Just as a reminder, you can become a premium subscriber today. Watch the full show completely uncut. Our reactions to each other's monologues. You get to listen to it. You get to ask us questions. All that good stuff. Link is right there in the description or at breakingpoints.com.
Best of all, great way to say screw you to the mainstream media.